This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Whew, that Michigan offense. And again, oh well. We won the Natty. Next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
They said you can't be Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace, and after watching that Week 1 performance against Fresno State, decided to go back and wear this Blake Corum Rose Bowl throwback from 9 months ago yet again to remind myself, oh well, we won the Natty, and that's what's important. Because that Michigan offense couldn't block, couldn't throw, couldn't catch, couldn't run routes. Other than that, it had a wonderful singing voice. So let's break it down. Some of my thoughts from Week 1 after rewatching the Michigan-Fresno State game. A few things that stood out to me. Warning, I'm just going to warn you right now, this is not for the faint of heart. Number 1, I felt every bit as bad about the quarterback play as I did watching it live. It seems that Davis Warren rarely went off his first read. With Warren, we're double limited. He's not enough of a passing threat to help the run game. He can't run himself to help the run game. To me, well, Steve, we won with Cade McNamara. We're not close to Cade McNamara yet. Okay, this is much closer to Nick Sheridan right now than Cade McNamara. Do I think he could be a Cade McNamara kind of quarterback by the end of the year? I do, yeah. But by then, we're already going to have played Texas, USC, and Washington, 3 ranked teams. So, oh well, we won the Natty. Number 2, given point 1, it's pretty clear Alex Orji was just absolutely unplayable after 30 practices this spring and summer not to beat Davis Warren out. Because even if it is remotely close, and when I say remotely, I'm talking within the continental United States level of remote. Even if it is remotely close, any coach with an IQ above 40 is going to play Alex Orji because of his superior traits and then just figure out the rest as the season goes on. Because Orji fixes the running game problem right away. He forces the box to balance out. He forces you to, numbers-wise, account for him. That at least fixes one problem. Maybe he can't throw the ball across the street, and we saw that, but he at least fixes the running game problem. So if he can't beat out Davis Warren based on what we saw Saturday night, then he's just not a playable quarterback. And they go look at what they did in the transfer portal, what they didn't do. It's very clear they thought Alex Orji was going to be the quarterback. Very clear. And it's very clear by waiting until the very end of camp And the dawn of game week, before naming an announcer, or naming a starter, I should say, they wanted him to be and gave him every opportunity, and he just could not do it. So here we are. Number 3, we actually ran the ball better against Fresno than we did East Carolina in last year's opener. And Fresno is a much, 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 much better Group of 5 program. To me, Khalil Mullings needs to be your RB1. Khalil Mullings is your old school Bo Schembechler era Michigan running back, sturdy, tough, good vision, squares his shoulders, gets downhill, gets yards. Keeps the chains moving. You turn Donovan Edwards into an offensive weapon. That's what I would do. I think we keep trying to make Dono a downhill running back, and it keeps not working. Number 4. I was mystified how little Davis Warren was under center so that we could run more play action. Now, since the head coach is the former OC, we can only conclude that that is being saved for Texas, or way more unlikely, it was just a major coaching oversight. Michigan play action has been the bedrock of the Michigan passing game for 40 years, over multiple eras. So I don't think it was a coaching oversight. More likely, we're going to see much more of Davis Warren under center running play action this week against Texas. 5, we are going to get RPO'd to death this week by Texas. Sarkisian might be the very best RPO coach on planet Earth. I thought the middle was definitely open against our defense. It was just that Fresno's mini quarterback just could not stand back there and deliver between his stature and the pressure. Now, Quinn Ewers isn't going to have that much of a problem. He's a much more statuesque quarterback. He's also behind a great offensive line, maybe the best in all of college football. Okay. Number 6, often our fan tropes are too simplistic, but sometimes they're not. And some of that, Don Brown fears with Wink, he just blitzes all the time. Some of that in the first game was warranted. I mean, other than an off day for Will Johnson and Will Johnson's off day, Will Johnson played his worst game in a Michigan uniform, still had a pick 6. That tells you how great he is. But if you look at the rest of the game, Fresno's big pass plays were against reserves that were left on an island like Don Brown used to do for reasons. But keep this in mind, it is entirely possible that Wink was testing what else he had there in preparation for Texas, for as great as our defensive front is, and it is. They are going up against arguably the best offensive line in college football next week, so it's unlikely you're just going to sit there, rush for the whole game, and get consistent pressure. There's going to have to be some exotics, and so you might as well see right now who can hold up in man coverage and who can't. I think it's possible that's what you were saying from Wink on those plays. Number 5, back to the quarterbacks. To me, I think we're left with 3 options here after all the stuff we were fed during camp, which is your typical camp hype BS. A, Davis Warren was really that good in camp, but then just wilted under the lights. B, Alex Orji is really just that bad. Or C, our coaches are morons. Now, it's obviously not C, so it's A or B or some combination thereof. And basically what's happening right now is we are paying for Jimmy's inability to sign a legit quarterback prospect in either the 22 or 23 classes. All right, so after J.J. McCarthy, we didn't stack quarterback after him. We don't have an heir apparent. We don't have a top 100, top 150 kid that had 40 scholarship offers that waited for a year or 2 to play. We don't have that. Now, Sharon has kind of fixed this. The next 3 classes, all right, we have Carter Smith, or we had Jaden Davis this class, Carter Smith, and then we have Brady Hart in the 26th class. And so now we're stacking quarterbacks the way you need to be an elite program. But we went 2 years and didn't get one that was really worthy of the Michigan program. And when we're paying for that right now, Jaden Davis is not ready to play. Family doesn't want him to play, reportedly. So we're in this no man's land. We thought, that we were going to be able to develop Orji. We didn't go get anybody in the portal. I don't understand that. To me, Kyle McCord is the perfect bridge quarterback for what Michigan needed this year. Just a game manager plus enough mobility that on 3rd and 4, he can run for a first down and can just deliver the football to be a consistent passing threat. The idea that he's at Syracuse and not here, I just find that, inexcusable. He would have been exactly what Michigan needs. Instead, we've got a big fat 0 there at the most important position in the sport, and it's pretty impossible to hide your quarterback in college football. I think it's going to be proven here this coming week. Number 6, speaking of that, let's get an early read on Texas. I think it's going to take +3 turnovers or a Banner to Hulk-like quarterback metamorphosis to outright win the game. I think it's going to be a lot like Clemson, Georgia. Maybe not quite as lopsided on the scoreboard because we are playing at home. But I think our defense is just going to get worn out and demoralized in the second half by an offense that just can't move the ball across the street. And that happens to you in these kinds of matchups when one team has a pro quarterback. Even if you think Quinn Ewers is a third-day NFL draft pick, he is solar systems beyond what we have. So you've got a pro quarterback on one side, you've got a zero on the other. It's going to take some fluky stuff like turnover luck. Otherwise, we're asking Davis Warren to make the greatest from start one to start two metamorphosis of a Michigan quarterback in the entire history of this program. So good luck with that. But well, we won the Natty. Which brings me to number 7. I suspect after this game against Texas, some things get exposed, confirmed, some chickens come home to roost, and some decisions are going to be reevaluated and then tested against Arkansas State before Big Ten play begins. Because remember, we're not out of the playoff race at all. Not out, especially with the rest of our schedule. Right now, the rest of our schedule has 4 more ranked teams. USC, Washington, they snuck into the AP poll this week. Ohio State and Oregon. Right? You win a couple of those games, go 9-3. You're gonna have a case for being in the playoffs. I mean, you go 10-2 and win a couple of those games, you will absolutely be in the playoffs. So we're not out of it, but I think this game, Texas is going to, expose some realities. And I think Michigan's going to have to go back to the drawing board before Arkansas State, and I think will, and treat Arkansas State as a preseason game for Big Ten play. I think this team, especially on offense, is far from a finished product. Hate to be negative. I just didn't take a lot out of the game positive if the goal is to be in the college football playoff and not the ReliaQuest Bowl. Although Tampa in January is not bad. However, never forget, we just won the Natty. In case you hadn't heard me say that a few times already, and that's all that matters. We'll find out what Mark Rogers thinks. Will my Bucknut friend pile on or try to dig me out of the pit that I'm not in? Next, stay tuned. Well, you heard what I had to say after watching Michigan's debut. Let's get the view from the scarlet and gray side of things with our good friend Mark Rogers. Check out his channel here on YouTube as well, The Voice of College Football. So much great content there around the greatest sport in America year-round. And Mark, I know you had a chance to hear what I had to say. I got the first glimpse of the new Michigan offense. It couldn't block, couldn't throw, couldn't catch, and couldn't route run. And therefore, my analysis is, oh, well, we won the Natty. And I would urge Michigan fans to start checking out what time the ReliaQuest Bowl kicks off there in Tampa, because that's likely where we are headed. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not surprised to hear that out of you, Steve. We've heard that song and dance before. I think it's a little bit of an overreaction. Now, you could have added Donovan Edwards to the list. You could have put him on there as well.
That season's not happening, brother. Not happening. I mean, at this point, they got to figure out they have to figure out even how to use him. I mean, it's just very clear he's not a downhill running back. I mean, that's one of the things I mentioned in the open. He's not RB1 even on the team. I mean, this team needs a guy who just squares his shoulders, old style, Stan Edwards, Rick Rogers, Bob Perryman, Gerald White, and Bo Schembechler running back. Just square your shoulders, get downhill, and move the chains. Okay, just do that. That's what this team needs more than anything with the defense it has. So, yeah, I'm not disheartened though, because we just won the Natty.
Well, my response, Steve, is of course going to be my typical response, and that's to counterpunch, to wait for your initial reaction to the game or the situation, and then to bring it back to balance a little bit. So I guess I'm going to be a Michigan supporter, Michigan optimist today is what I'm going to do, at least to start. So Khalil Mullings had a big fourth quarter, of course, had that one drive in which he ran like a man possessed on a couple carries to get Michigan some breathing room, and the offensive line finally fired out on some run blocks, and they got going there. And that was a response to Fresno State getting to within 16-10 with about 10 minutes left. So let's credit the offense for finally responding to a score by Fresno State when they needed to respond, and they took it down the field. Davis Warren didn't look bad. He made most of the throws. He misfired a few times, but of course that's going to happen. He came that close to hitting Tyler Morris downfield on what would have been a pretty play, and really the only shot that they took downfield. Otherwise, for a couple series there mid-game, like late second quarter into the third, I thought I was just watching the same pass tree routes over and over, and Colston Loveland pretty much running the same route over and over, because I couldn't, and still can't liken this offense to anything if it continues to take this approach from a passing standpoint. I don't know what team has ever succeeded by featuring the tight end first and foremost. But that's the guy. He's your best player on offense. So that seems to work. Look for the tight end. He's the security blanket. Now I got to think Texas is going to overplay Colston Loveland coming up this Saturday. But Alex Orji, there was a comment made during the broadcast by Todd Blackledge that the Michigan coaching staff talked extensively about how they took this piece of clay and they've molded him and developed him, and that his passing skills have gotten so much better. Well, I know he only threw it 3 times, but man, he's chucking the ball in the dirt, and I don't know what they've developed there. But I would think that to make his running more effective, if they're going to continue with the same play distribution in regards to how much they play Davis Warren versus Alex Orji, about an 80-20 split, and just make Alex Orji a feature guy coming off the bench, that they're going to have to find maybe 3 plays that they can repeat in practice, that they can find a throw or 2 or 3 that he can make to make Texas think a little bit and maybe even surprise them if they dare allow him to put the ball in harm's way. I don't know if they're going to go that route, though.
I mean, for me to respond to anything you just said would just be repeat everything I just said. So let's go to the future, and that's this week against Texas. And I mean, I'm not usually a big proponent that teams hold something back, with one exception. When you're playing a team you think you're going to beat week 1, and then you're playing a game of the year kind of game in week 2. Like last year, people forget Michigan struggled to run the football by our standards much of the first half of last year. In fact, I went and looked. We actually ran the ball better against Fresno State than we did East Carolina in the opener a year ago. And Fresno State's just a way better group of 5 program than East Carolina is. Okay. And so there was a lot of talk that Michigan's holding something back. You're not holding things back for 6 weeks. You're not doing that in college football. All right. But I do think they held some things back in that we saw almost no play action from Michigan the whole game. One of the few times we did see it was the touchdown to Colston Loveland when they were running the ball at the end. And I did like that play call, because it would have been pretty simple and easy just to keep running the ball and taking more time off the clock the way you were running at that drive. But I think they recognized somebody playing quarterback's got to come out of this game with some kind of confidence for next week. So to let Davis Warren throw a touchdown pass there to Colston Loveland off the play action, I think was vital. But when you move forward to this week, it reminds me a lot of the situation when Texas went to Alabama last year. It reminds me a lot of the Clemson-Georgia game. Now, I don't think the score will get that far out of hand because we are playing at home. But the kind of game where it's, what was it? Clemson-Georgia was 6-0 at the half. And then Georgia got the ball, went right down the field and scored a touchdown. And you could just feel, if you watch that game live, you could feel the will of the Clemson team broke at 13-0 because they just knew we have a total 0 at quarterback, Now, that's what happens when you recruit a 5-star and he sucks. I'm not sure Michigan, and I think our culture is not at a place where it's just going to get broken when it's a 13-0. But you do risk, we get late in the third quarter, fourth quarter, say it's like 20-7 Texas, right? And you're really balling out and your offense is moving nowhere. Eventually, your spirit just breaks. And I think that's what's going to happen on Saturday. I think there'll be some things that Michigan will demonstrate. I think you'll see Davis Warren under center more so they can run more play action and things of that nature. But I just think offensively, they're not in a position to be able to win a game like this yet. Maybe if they played a month or so from now, but they don't, and I just think the same dynamic you had in Clemson, Georgia. One team's got a pro quarterback. The other team has a 0 at quarterback. Okay. That's exactly what you have in this game. We are, I wouldn't even call Davis Warren a jag. I hope he gets to jag. We're playing a walk-on that is a mid-American level recruit because the coaches spent 9 months grooming Alex Orji to be the guy. Look what they did in the transfer portal. They did not go get more receivers. They were not good. This is not the offense they were going to run. They were going to run an Alex Orji kind of an offense. And so you get an idea of how bad he must have been in camp, that he couldn't win the job after 30 practices in the spring and the summer. Because if it's even close, Mark, remotely close, like in the same area code, any coach is going to take the traits guy over this guy. Okay. So you had to know that Alex Orji just wasn't a playable quarterback. So, I mean, this is what we have. And I think I wouldn't say it's Deacon Hill bad, but by Michigan standards, I believe it will be. And so at least early on, I think it's going to take it's going to take a month, I think, for this thing to get to any kind of rhythm at all. And that's if it does. And by then they'll have played Texas, USC, and at Washington.
Well, I wouldn't lose hope on this game for a number of reasons. Yes, the game is at home. This is a championship team. This is a team that came back from a championship in which just about everybody on the offense and defense outside the quarterback has championship game experience. They played in big games. They've performed well in that arena. And Quinn Ewers, again, Michigan can have a special defensive effort. The matchups on the Texas side with guys like Ryan Wingo, who's a great freshman wide receiver, and Isaiah Bond and that crew versus the Michigan secondary, that is a matchup for the ages. Whoever wins those one-on-one matchups, if Michigan's secondary is as good as it was last year and as good as it showed in this game against Fresno State, there was obviously a point in that fourth quarter where, based on some ticky-tack penalties, Michigan would have taken the ball back from Fresno State and made it more of a lopsided score, gave Fresno State the opportunity to score that touchdown that got it a little bit closer, or took it down the field before the Will Johnson pick six. So this defense can still be special. Of course, the pass rush is going to be paramount, that they make Quinn Ewers ordinary, because every quarterback's compromised by a pass rush. So that combination, pass rush and secondary one-on-one matchups, that's what falls possibly in Michigan's favor, even though Texas is possibly elite in those categories. And, of course, Texas has an offensive line that is stout, and that's going to be another marquee matchup. So I hear you on the offensive side, but let's not discount what Michigan can do on defense. And if they can just muck up the game, and we could have a low double digits game going into the fourth quarter. And if they can hang around 13-10, something in that range, then maybe they get a drive going like they did, where it's a lot of Colston Loveland and it's a lot of Khalil Mullings and the offensive line. Look at Notre Dame's offensive line. 6 starts coming back. I've never heard a statistic that low. And they looked pretty awful most of the game, but they got better and better and better and found their sea legs the final half of the fourth quarter and showed us some mettle. So not all is lost.
What is nothing's lost. We won the Natty. I don't see I don't see the framework of an offense against this kind of schedule that could be a college football playoff team. I don't see that. I mean, this would take one of the biggest week one, and everybody wants to talk about, well, we almost lost to Illinois a couple years ago. Not the same thing. That's the ebb and flow of a middle of a season with a veteran team. It's the week before the Ohio State game. You're playing with a first round pick at quarterback. It's not the same thing. It's just, Baker Mayfield and Stetson Bennett were walk-ons. Everybody goes to those two examples because the other 99% of examples of walk-on quarterbacks suck, okay? The odds that you have one of those two once a century, once a decade outliers, and you just don't have every other form of walk-on quarterback, again, not very high. This is not the team that the Michigan coaches banked all offseason they were going to have. It's not. They thought Alex Orji was going to take the next step. Instead, he clearly must have taken a massive step back. So here we are.
What do we think? Davis Warren can be Cade McNamara?
That would be a massive upgrade from what I just saw. Massive. I mean, massive upgrade.
That could possibly be accomplished. He could be Cade McNamara. I could see that growth and development from him over the course of this season. Maybe
over the course of the season, I could potentially see it, but again, in the next 5 games, We are playing a guy who may end up being the most prolific passer in Texas history, yet another Lincoln Riley quarterback, and we're playing the all-time leading passer in the history of the Southeastern Conference. Those are 3 of our next 5 games, you know? And so when your quarterback is a 0 and you're up against those 3 guys, okay, you're just asking a lot of your defense, brother. You're asking a lot, you know? That's all. I mean,
I got to go with you on the quarterback perspective from this standpoint. If you watch what Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier did on Saturday night, especially Moss, the further the game went along, the special passing skills were just on display. And then you compare that to a Davis Warren. Yeah, when I watch Davis Warren isolated in a vacuum, my 1985 brain at times thinks, okay, he's marginal. He's okay. He can, with a strong running game and the offensive line and the defense and that whole framework of a concept of this is what Michigan football is, they can get by with that and go 9-3. But then when you watch the huge advantage of a Miller Moss throwing NFL passes in tight windows, he was extraordinary, I thought, on Monday night, especially in the second half. Yeah, that's a lot to overcome. Quinn Ewers, though, on his average day is not what Miller Moss was. He's a good quarterback, and he's one of the best in the business, but Miller Moss was on fire Monday night. And, yeah, it may take a little bit of luck. It may take Quinn Ewers being a bit off of his game for Michigan to hang around and pull out a win.
I think just trying to run Tressel ball with Todd Bozeman at quarterback against this schedule, not the Jim Tressel era Big Ten, brother. Not the Jim Tressel era Big Ten. All right. Anyway, before we let you go, we won the Natty. Anyway, before we let you go, what's the biggest overreaction to week 1? Because in this sport, it's impossible not to overreact to week 1. We're given no preseason games. And it's the first time any of us see any of these teams at all in any live action whatsoever. It's not like the NFL where fans are at training camp most days, right? We don't see anything. For 9 months, we see nothing. So it's impossible not to just totally overreact to the first game that you see when there was nothing else to see until the last game 9 months ago. What's the biggest overreaction to week 1 that you are confident will not turn out to be true by the end of the season?
Ooh, you had to throw that addendum at the end. I was going to say the biggest overreaction is Miami's win over Florida. Yes, that was a big win for Mario Cristobal. It's a difficult place to play historically, but this is just a mess of a football program, football team under Billy Napier at Florida. So, yes, Miami is the front runner in the ACC because look at the ACC. It's so deplorably bad. Virginia Tech loses to Vandy as a 2-touchdown favorite, and look at Clemson's a mess. And I know that they played, yes, Ohio State guy here is saying Georgia is the most complete football program until further notice. They are the best football team in the nation. They have no weaknesses. They are just solid. And I know Clemson's not the Clemson of the past, but overreaction would be that Miami's got everything squared away and they're fine. Their dysfunction may rear its ugly head at some point this season. I do believe that, and I said this going into the weekend, but that there was no bigger game for any team this weekend than Notre Dame going to Texas A&M and winning that game. They had to win that game, and despite a weak schedule, they needed to show in an SEC environment against a decent team that they could get it done. And then I just want to make one other note about USC and LSU. When the overreaction for most of us also has to do with that second guessing of, well, we saw this in week 1, but that great offensive showing must be because that defense sucks. Well, we got to wait and see. Mm-hmm. I'm confident that LSU has a good offense. I don't need to see any more. I know Garrett Nussmeier can quarterback. I know they've got a top 5 to 10 offensive line. I know they've got NFL dudes at wide receiver. That USC defense is improved. They hit now. They are invested in tackling. They actually have a legitimate defense. I don't have to see any more to know that maybe they're not thin enough, or maybe they're too thin that they won't withstand the pounding of a Big Ten schedule. But I know that they've got legit dudes on defense and a trusted, responsible, reliable defensive coordinator who knows what he's doing. And so I think that's maybe the biggest takeaway is that USC has at least a capable defense.
Last question for you. I mean, I'll give you a prop bet, and I don't even think it's close, by the way. But Heading into the bye week on October 12th, pardon me, which is exactly halfway into Michigan's season, okay? What is more likely, that Michigan is 6-0 or 3-3? I mean, I think it's not even close. It's way more likely Michigan is 3-3. I would say it's like minus 200 on the side of 3-3. I don't even think it's close.
Texas, USC, and who else before
Washington on the road.
I take 6-0. Not by much, but I take it.
Wow.
Now, if you threw out 4-2, I'm taking 4-2.
Yeah, that's easy. No, that's an easy bet. Yeah, anybody would make that bet. This is the harder bet. That's why it's a hard question. But I don't even think it's close that it's more likely we're 3-3. All right. Well, hey, you know what? When you've got to go to your Bucknut fan friend for a pick-me-up, all you can say to that is, at least you won the Natty. Good to see you, Mark. Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it, Steve.
You bet. This week's Twitter or X poll results. Are you lowering your expectations after seeing the reality of Michigan's quarterback situation? After months and weeks of camp BS, why do we have this every year? Every school has this. I mean, no one's buying tickets or subscriptions after being told negatives, right? Pick a fan base. Hey, give us $100 to subscribe to our website for a year. We're going to suck. No one does that, all right? So that happens everywhere. Or do you still think this is a potential playoff team on defense and special teams alone? 2/3 of you. I think this is the most voted in poll we've ever had. At least I know it's in the top 5. 2/3 of you, 65%, said you are lowering expectations, which is where I am. 35% of you said you're still playoff or bust. So to that, I just say, keep hope alive. All right, let's get to this week's feedback of the week. Jordan Johnson says, if Jack Tuttle comes back for USC in the games after, maybe there's still a chance at 10-2. Otherwise, quarterback play is just absolutely not there this year. Jordan, if Jack Tuttle's had 7 years in college football and shown nothing. 7 years at 3 different schools, and he hasn't shown himself to be anything other than just a guy. So if we are pining away for a guy who in 7 years of college football has produced nothing, missed all of spring with an injury, and missed most of fall camp with that same injury, if that's the savior, then might actually want to take a look at what the Motor City Bowl looks like, if that's the savior. I mean, you're making me optimistic with the ReliaQuest Bowl reservation. But oh well, we won the Natty. That'll do it for this week's episode. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review, whether it's here on YouTube or you're listening on iTunes or elsewhere. Also, don't forget that, by the way, why do we ask you to do that? Not just my ego, but it also helps with the algorithm to help us find more Michigan fans just like you. And then you can also follow us in between episodes and on game day, where I am told we are roll out the barrel levels of family fun. Follow us on X at Michigan Podcast there, on X at Michigan Podcast. Until the next time, when we're likely licking our Longhorn wounds, we'll see you next week right here on Michigan Podcast. I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.